Hey folks, Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for a vintage league. I received a donation from Garrett Y for a dealer's choice league, and this is a deck that I've been eyeing for the last couple of days, and I'm pretty excited to give it a go. So we're playing a vintage Hatebears deck, and traditionally the Hatebears decks are not blue cantrip decks, but this one is. Now, there aren't as many cantrips as you might expect from, like, say, a legacy deck, because, like, Ponder and Brainstorm are restricted, but we still have some nice card draw options here in Ancestral, Brainstorm, and Ponder. But the real reason to be in Bant for Hate Bears is so that you can play Noble Hierarch into a broken thing slightly more consistently. Your goal is to drop a Haymaker on either turn 1 or turn 2 that has a warping effect on the game. So Collector Oof can shut off opposing Moxen and steal a shop matchup just that easily. Lavinia is great against a huge number of vintage decks if it comes down on turn 1, especially if you're on the play, because it'll end up countering your opponent's Moxen. I'm going to read this one here in case you're not familiar with it, since this doesn't see much legacy play. Each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. So that side of it keeps you from casting broken things quickly off of Moxen. And the other part is, whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So your spells that are coming off of a Bolas's Citadel, countered. Your Moxen and other zero-cost artifacts, countered. Your Force of Wills, Force of Negations, countered. Mental Misstep, no thank you. It's a very powerful hate bear. It is legendary, though, so you oftentimes don't end up playing 4 in these lists, even though it is quite good. And then we have things like Archon of Emeria, like we saw in my recent Hate Bears stream, Hullbreacher, which is also seeing plenty of legacy play, and a couple of planeswalkers like Narset and Oko. Now, notably, in Legacy, I hate Oko. It's like terribly warping, it kind of invalidates everything, it creates bad play patterns. In Vintage, it's just like another thing you can do, and a lot of times it doesn't even feel particularly great. It's just a strong card that you end up playing. It gives you wiggle room against some very problematic permanents, and it's strong, but it's very ventable in Beat It in Vintage, and Pyroblast is often main decked, so it's not like it's just sticking on the board and dominating forever. Vintage decks can also put a ton of power in play with things like Monastery Mentor and Bazaar of Bad Dad pooping in hollow ones, so like it dies in combat more than it does in Legacy. The sideboard is largely addressing specific threats. The main deck is pretty well geared to beating blue decks, and so you'll see like 4, 7, 8, 9 graveyard hate cards here. We've got a clear target, as well as the awesome energy flux, which is devastatingly good versus a shops deck. I'm super excited to be trying out this list, and thank you again to Garrett Y for the donation. If you want the deck list or you want donation info, it's always in the video description. Click show more if you can't see everything. And if you enjoy vintage content, please take a moment to like the video and think about subscribing if you aren't already subscribed. Help my metrics, help more people find this sweet vintage content. All right, let's battle. So this first opening hand is like so close to awesome. With one payoff card over basically any of these others, I'd keep this. But we have nothing going on here. I need to ship this one. This is fine. I'm not excited about this, but this is fine. I need 1, 2, 3 mana to cast Archon on turn 2, which is currently my primary plan. And the question is, like, which is more valuable, this Brainstorm or this Tarmogoyf? I don't think the Brainstorm's particularly valuable right now. It can become valuable later. I think I'm going to bin the Brainstorm, as weird as that is. Like, I have my turn 1 planned, I have my turn 2 planned. And the Brainstorm would have to fit into some space, probably realistically around turn 4 or 5. And since I've already mulliganed once, I think I just want to keep the cards that are most proactive. Alright, so we're seeing a Once Upon a Time. This is most likely to be a bizarre deck. Yep. So we're going to be playing against probably the Hollowvine deck list that has like e- either Pravican Horror or Squee or Bull. Oh fuck. That was a good turn. I am very glad that I kept the Tarmogoyf. The Tarmogoyf can maybe um, brick wall this Vengevine. Good thing we have that giant pile of Graveyard Hate in the sideboard, by the way. We are going to need it. Okay. Opponent's first turn is Chef's Kiss. They're doing vintage things. I think it's fine to pay life for this here. That Cradle they have is actually, like, quietly quite good. The Cradle is a single land that can allow them to pump these. I'm actually under a very large amount of pressure. I might end up playing a Tarmogoyf and a Ponder next turn over an Archon. You're glad they didn't keep that Wasteland. And instead they Memnited into their own Chalice. I'm very happy about that. We take those. Yeah, this Tarmogoyf is freaking huge. I need to play that this turn. Am I supposed to play Tarmogoyf and Noble Hierarch? Trying to think what the Ponder actually accomplishes here. It doesn't accomplish a ton. It can work towards a second large body. I'm going to take 4 next turn as of right now. I don't really want to take 4. Blocking with a Noble Hierarch only blocks 1 point of damage. Maybe I play another Noble Hierarch and I just don't end up blocking with it most of the time. We just gives my opponent a little bit more food every turn. I would really love a Wasteland. Alright, I go to 1 here. My fetch land gets shut off. Containment Priest main deck? No. I'd like Wasteland. I'd like Swords to Plowshares. Another Tarmogoyf, honestly, would be pretty great. Flusterstorm, not particularly good. I can Ponder and then play an Archon, but then the Archon has to chump block. That's not great. Could just play an Archon, then block one with Tarmogoyf, block one with a Hierarch. Roughly how many good hits do I have? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Even these are fine. 12, 13. Maybe it's fine to go ahead and do this. Okay. I will be keeping this all. The Force of Will is a dead card. Can I play Oko this turn? I can't really play Oko this turn, right? I can't use my Windswept Heath for mana. So I want to play Oko next turn and Wasteland this turn. The question is, what do I Wasteland? The Bazaar? Probably just Wasteland the Bazaar. Despite the fact that the Cradle's pretty good here. Alright. So let's blow up Bazaar. Now I'm going to do something that looks a little weird. I'm going to play this Archon with the intention of throwing it under the bus. The reason I'm doing that is so that next turn I can play Oko and plus on a Noble Hierarch if that's something that I end up wanting to do. As long as my opponent's last card isn't another Bazaar, this line is great. Notably, though, that Bazaar is going to enter tapped, so I think my opponent should have attacked first if they are planning on attacking. Because then if I chump block with the Archon, I end up pretty far ahead. Sorry, they end up a little bit further ahead. Blue, green, some other color. Okay. My opponent's last card is Squee, so this is just resolving. I think this Noble Hierarch just needs to become a dude. There is a world where I make a food, though. I make a food, then I can play Windswept Heath in my next upkeep, crack Windswept Heath, and then not draw that Force of Will. That's sort of interesting. I think I'm just going to turn this into a 3/3 and make it so that I am safest on board. It's somewhat I think I messed up. I think I was supposed to attack with Archon before doing that, and then I get one more exalted damage in. I'm fine with just leaving these two back and then losing to a haste idiot. No, I'm not fine with that attack. I'm just going to wait. But if I was going to attack, I shouldn't have plussed on Noble Hierarch before doing that. Alright, what about this turn? Is this a food turn? This might be a food turn. Because then, like, Force of Will becomes live, this fetch land becomes live. My opponent attacks Hollow One here, Hierarch here, and Archon somewhere else. The Archon dies in combat, but then my opponent would lose 2 of their creatures as well. I'd still have Tarmogoyf. Yeah. Let's make food. Let's go ahead and always yield to that. We're not messing around with sweet triggers right now. There is also a world where I don't crack the food and I just turn it into an elk. But cracking the food seems pretty valuable. Oh man. I am happy to see that concession. I don't think things are 100% locked up for me yet. That probably does it though. All right. So let's figure out what we're doing. Leyline is great. Payment Priest is great. Birds of Plowshares, Graftear's Cage, great. So what don't I want? I was about to say Hull Breachers, but I don't think that's actually true, right? Because Bazaar is a thing. So maybe on the draw here, let's not play Dazes. I don't think Flusterstorm's pretty good. I don't think Mental Misstep is particularly strong. Honestly, a lot of my blue cards seem kind of medium. Like, I want to play Graveyard Hate, and then I want to start killing my opponent or stabilizing the board. I think the game's already over by the time I can cast a Dig Through Time. Playing a lot of permanents to the board. I still need 5 more cuts if I'm going to bring in this giant pile of things. Does that just mean I, like, don't do these because I've already boarded out 5 blue cards? That might be the case. Oh, right. Collector Oof is not particularly great. I should probably be starting by removing that. And then keep in, like, a Force or a Dig Through Time. They're both weird as one-ofs, and my blue count is really low. I think I'm going to keep the Dig Through Time. This feels like a vintage hand. Note that my opponent can have something like a Force of Vigor to go ahead and take care of this, and they can still play things like Hollow Ones. That can just ignore this aspect of Leyline. Alright, let's get perfect information, shall we? Oh yeah, my opponent's hand does not do a ton here. Okay, so they have a strip mine, so they're very likely to just strip mine my tropical island when I play it. I think that means I'm supposed to lead on Noble Hierarch over anything else here. Just get that extra mana source into play. Because their way through this game could very easily end up being something like strip mine me, Noxious Revival, strip mine. If I can, I'll wait to play out Grafdigger's Cage until after a Force of Vigor. Alright, so that was Memnite and Noxious Revival gone there. I don't really care about these 1/1s. I have a small Tarmogoyf coming, but like a small Tarmogoyf is still a Tarmogoyf. Oh, also, like, they can't Noxious Revival a strip mine, right? Like, I play line. So JK about that part. Um, the upside is really huge if I Ancestral myself. Hitting a land or a Mox is really good. But the downside of that is that I know my opponent has a Force of Negation. So I end up pretty far behind in terms of mana if I do that, and then they don't Force of Negation it. Or sorry, let me rephrase that. If I cast Ancestral targeting me and they Force of Negation it, I end up not making a land drop this turn and getting to the point where I can put this Hullbreacher into play. So given that, I think I'm just going to go ahead and play a Noble Hierarch here. And then this turn, if they end up getting rid of that Force of Negation, I'll fire off the Ancestral. Tarmogoyf is currently only a 2/3 since I do have the ley line that's keeping all of these sweet permanent types from coming into play. But like once I cast Ancestral, it'll be a 3/4. And it'll be pretty easy to like chump block with the Noble Hierarch at some point to grow it into a 4/5, at which point it's better than Hollow Ones. My opponent has some sort of tough decision here. I'm not sure exactly what it is they're thinking about. Guncoil Serpent. Okay. So I know they have Force of Negation, Bazaar of Baghdad, and X, where X is an unknown card. What card would I want to get Force of Negation? Probably just Time Walk rather than Ancestral. I could just put the Tarmogoyf into play this turn. My Time Walk becomes much better once the Tarmogoyf is actually in play. This is a weird game. Alright, so that's Force of Will pitching Force of Negation. That's fine. Now next turn, I can Ancestral and then probably Time Walk in the same turn cycle. I think we've played this hand in a way that allows me to leverage my powerful blue cards and actually get to resolve them. Oh, I don't mind that. So let's start here. Although I could just I could just pass the turn, like play Wasteland, pass the turn, and then when they activate Bazaar of Baghdad, get them with Hull Breacher. All right, we're in no hurry here. Oh man. Oh man. This is sick. Oh, now I get to Ancestral too? Oh god, it's so dirty. This the concession? Not the concession. But I think this is the point where the game is over. So let's draw 3 cards casually. Yeah. This deck feels good. This opening hand doesn't have enough mana to operate and doesn't do anything unfair. I'm gonna go ahead and mulligan this one. Ahem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana on turn 1. Keep. I'm keeping this. What doesn't fit into this hand? So, if 5 mana on turn 1, can I cast Lavinia and Oko? I would have to crack Black Lotus for green, so the answer is no. I want to play Lavinia on turn 1. This is awkward, but is Black Lotus card supposed to go back? No, I guess I can't cast the Noble Hierarch anyway right now. Let's put a Noble Hierarch back. Just confirming this is not symmetrical, right? Yeah. Each opponent. I'm gonna go ahead and put this into play in case we're playing against like shops or something. And I need to play around a taxation effect. Alright. Cool. So next we have turn 2 Oko. Black Lotus only sacrifices to make mana of 1 color, so we don't get turn 1 Oko. Would you judge me if I just put Archon of Emeria into play instead of Lavinia? Because I'm doing that. Oko still pitches to Force of Will, and I think I'm in a position where I can just protect what I have and win if our opponent is just playing some blue deck. And then once I draw some disposable blue card, like we can talk about putting an Oko into play. My opponent will probably fetch a tapped dual land here. You'd love to see it. We might be playing a mirror. Yeah, it's kind of looking like it. It's always a little bit hard to tell in Vintage. Let's play the Oko. Famous last words, but like, what's the worst that can happen? We have like two different hate bears in play, so we're pretty unlikely to lose to some sort of like Esper PO deck. My opponent has disconnected. I'll pause the video. I'll be back in a few. Okay, they got back in quickly. So we'll grab Tropical Island here, and then play an Oko. Yep, that seems fair. Okay, I don't know that we actually are playing a mirror. We might be. Like, mana base looks like it reasonably could be a mirror. I am probably not really going to sideboard. I think I'm going to sub one Collector Oof for a Swords to Plowshares and just call that good. This hand needs to be mulligan just because it doesn't have functional mana. Uh, yes. It has Ancestral. How bad can it be? I think Ancestral on my opponent's upkeep. That plays around Force of Negation. Possible I want to Ancestral in response to them casting a spell on their turn, though. I want this to be a Trop. I think I'm going to play a Tundra. That opens me up to Wasteland, but whatever. I'm going to let them make the first move. Okay, yeah, it does look like a mirror. So I'm going to take this opportunity to cast Ancestral. And then, like, we have a Swords to Plowshares for a Tarmogoyf. I really wanted to draw a Mox there. But beggars can't be choosers. Two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, 9 cards in hand. Am I wastelanding them? I kind of want to wasteland them. Take them off of like Tarmogoyf and Oko. I'm going to play Wasteland. I'll cast Swords to Plowshares now. I have a misstep for their misstep, if that's something that we're going to see. Is Mind Harness. Okay. Alright. So I'm just going to let that go. And I think I am still fine with Wastelanding. I have more resources than my opponent does, and I can play around this Mind Harness. Don't mind having that. Big is this? Small. Oh, Mind Harness just costs 1 also. Like, lol. Nice Mind Harness, though. I'll let that go. Oh, wait, hold on. They pitched Mind Harness, didn't they? They didn't reveal that. Oh, well. We'll pretend I'm saving it for, like, an Ancestral. How big are you? You're a 2/3 right now. That's fine. Archon of Emeria is a touch awkward here. I think I'm going to play it, even though it makes my defensive counter spells worse. I wish I would have mental misstepped the Swords to Plowshares now. I just, like, totally had a brain fart there with, like, what zone that thing was in. I can't force a will back if my opponent does something there, but that's fine. I think I'm pretty well in the driver's seat at this point. All Swords to Plowshares, their Tarmogoyf end of turn if they don't do anything. Oh no. That's not good news for them. I don't think my opponent mulliganed aggressively enough in this match. Maybe I should have just played Collect Roof. Like, Oko is blue and pitches to Force. Alright, my opponent has given me the GGs. GGs indeed. I have a very interesting hand here, in that this doesn't do anything broken on turn 1, but it puts a squeeze on turn 2 if Lavinia is good against my opponent. I am not sure whether or not this hand is good enough to keep. I'm going to keep it to find out. Like, it has wastes. Okay, we're playing against Oath. We might just lose this one to being on the draw here. Okay. What is the exact wording of this? This doesn't cast it, right? It reveals it and puts it into play. Okay. That is bad. They also have the Forbidden Orchard. All right. I have basically no outs here. Well, I guess, like, technically I can find an Oko. I think I realistically don't have outs. I'm not going to give away information about how my opponent should be sideboarding. All right. Why can't I move this box? I really want to look at the text of this card. Okay, so everything goes to the graveyard later, not immediately. All right, Cage stops that, right? All right. Swords to Plowshares on my own stuff is actually kind of reasonable here. I think I want cages. I think I want meddling mage. I'm gonna get that full text of Oath of Druids real quick. Beginning of each player's upkeep, that player chooses target player who controls more creatures than he or she does. The first player may reveal cards from the top of their library until he or she reveals a creature card. Okay, I need more text than that. If the first player does, that player puts that card onto the battlefield and all other cards revealed this way into their graveyard. Okay. Yeah, so cage is fine. And so we are also going to want our containment priests. What don't I want? The Source of Last Year's is like simultaneously good and bad because a lot of times those creatures entering play effectively wins the game anyway, but I'm not sure that I cannot play these. I might even want another. Collector Oofs are Then most of my other cards are reasonable, and I think it becomes a little harder to figure out what I should and shouldn't have. I'm not sold on these for this game. I don't think the game effectively goes this late. I think I'm tapping out for important stuff quickly, and I'll trim one threat. Try something like this. I'm not confident about sideboarding. Nope. This also kind of feels like nope. Like, turn 2 Narset is not really where I want to be versus this deck. I think I'm going to mulligan more aggressively. This is a do nothing hand. All right. I had to keep 4 of these, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 in all likelihood. Notably, we have multiple multicolored cards, so I can't use the Mox to accelerate this stuff out early. Not not optimistic about my odds here. All right, one bottom, one top. All right, you've got your Mox. Played that around Lavinia. All right, so Lavinia has some text here still. And Lavinia is better against like some of the secondary plans that this deck might have. Lavinia also makes it so it's easier to resolve Meddling Mage. I think I'm going to go ahead and put the Lavinia into play. I don't feel super good about like my chances. And so I think trying to shut off my opponent's Force of Will effect might be important to actually resolve this, stick it on Oath, and then like maybe get lucky regarding some top decks and go from there. Yep. You got? How? Okay. Notably, that hit Meddling Mage instead of, or sorry, that hit Lavinia instead of Meddling Mage. Hell yeah, win condition. Hmm. Hmm. Not good. Ah. Hmm. Not great. We're just gonna put that on Force of Will. We need to take this Iona off the table, and we need to resolve this Swords to Plowshares. I'm so glad they didn't name white. They were just F6'd. I could have just put it on, whatchamacallit, Oath. I don't have that many cantrips that shuts off. That's not the end of the world. And I can attack and kill that so they can't get another card out of it. I am happy with this draw. Go hit Narset. There's a world where I'm supposed to cast this Containment Priest in my own turn because of the ability to hardcast some counterspell, but I don't think that's actually the case since I have Force of Will shut off. Nice. I can't actually take them off of any color. Not sure that what I Strip Mine has too much meaning here. In the world where they have to tap one of these for mana, what are they most likely to do? Red, but they have Mox for that. Let's take them off green, I guess. I guess I should technically do this on their turn, but probably doesn't matter. Also, Mana Crypt is potentially going to speed up our clock by a turn randomly. So I have 10 damage over 2 turns, so 1 Mana Crypt flip is the difference between a 2 and 3 turn clock. I will fire this Misstep off on literally any spell that I can. Oh yeah, they lost the flip. Oh, buddy. Yeah, I straight up lose that game if they put Iona on white. Like, I guess if they put it on blue, it means that Oko isn't an out, and then I don't get to cantrip towards outs. Sort of interesting. So now I know they have a show and tell alternative plan, but my sideboard is not really for a lot of these sorts of fair decks. I want the dig. Yeah, I want the dig. I think I want the dig over one Archon or Tarmogoyf. I'm not sure which one. I think over a Tarmogoyf. I think this game is not about Tarmogoyf. This game is about like Grafdigger's Cage, Containment Priest, or maybe Meddling Mage. Sounds really awkward. I think the mana is just too awkward with this hand. It has magic cards that have relevant text, but I don't know that this wins. Yeep. This one's awkward. I'm like all in on an Archon, which is not the hate card that I want to be all in on. I think this is about the same quality as the previous hand. I'm going to throw back one of these two cards. The dig is very hard to cast right now. I easily only put 2 cards into the graveyard. I'm going to toss that back. I'm not super stoked about this hand, but I think this one falls into the category of good enough that I don't pitch it. Alright, well. Now my opponent gets to see exactly what's up. No getting to Mize an Iona after my opponent names the wrong color. The jig is up. It's white. This is also a hand where if my Black Lotus gets countered, it is very much worth the 2-for-1 for my opponent. I won't be able to play anything other than Swords to Plowshares. My opponent kept no mana. Are you just like sandbagging your land and you're going off next turn? All right, I gotta try, right? Like, all right, that's a force, pitch a force. Armorglyph will be big if I can spike a land. I'm gonna go ahead and pay the life here. I see. So they kept a hand that could tinker instantly if they draw a blue source. All right, well, we're both in Awkward City. And we're both looking for lands. Nice. I need green mana here. I'll grab Trop. Puts a Tarmogoyf into play, which is a 5/6. It is huge. All right, my opponent found Valk. They're going to tinker. I don't have an immediate answer to. They can find like a Bolas's Citadel, maybe. Oh no, it's just a Sphinx at the Steel Wind. So as long as I draw a white source, this is not an issue. That's a white source. It takes its turn, but it's a white source. So now my opponent can brainstorm and try to fix the rest of their hand and find stuff to protect the Sphinx. Oh, that's devastating. Womp womp. Okay, I have a couple of turns to get out of this. I know my opponent has Pyroblast, which means both Hullbreacher and Oko are kind of mediocre. This protection from green so it doesn't get Oko'd. What's my line? Is it just Wasteland my opponent? My line might be just Wasteland my opponent. Although Oko getting one food into play would be solid. I think Oko just gets Pyroblasted on the stack, though. Maybe I end up needing this mana more than my opponent. This could also just get dazed. I value this food very highly. Now it's just going to be a mystery what my opponent has. So I need to crack this food to stay alive, which means that I can't really do anything else. Take another food. I think I just make another food and pass. There's the shuffle for their brainstorm. All right, one more draw. I guess I could draw any land, not necessarily a white land, and then I can crack 2 clues. But that's not good. Now that just means they'll have a hard counter to Swords to Plowshares, and they know about it from earlier in the game. Rough. I wonder if it was wrong for me to, like, get drop to put Tarmogoyf into play. I think clocking my opponent is important when they're keeping a hand that, like, has such a risky line, but if their best Tinker target was just Sphinx of the Steel Wind, like, waiting a turn is better for me in many cases. Oh, Time Walk is gross. Alright. GG's. I would not have drawn the white source. So I have a turn 2 Oko, but I have like nothing other than Oko and like a lot of lands. I think I'm just gonna ship this one. Huge fan of your content. You're in a video. Good luck. I'm gonna be keeping this hand. I think I'm gonna put back the Source to Plowshare since it's like the least generic card here. Our hand isn't really busted, but like we have something that's good against chops, we have a generic counter spell, we have some stuff that's good against blue. Alright, I will force to protect this. I am not sure what I pitch, though, if I have to make that decision. Okay. We are playing against PO, in which case Hull Breacher is great, Oko is medium, Dig Through Time is not good yet, but it will become good later. Come on! Come on, little oof that could get in there. Generally speaking, I think we're going to be favored in this matchup. We have a lot of high impact cards that we can protect via counter magic. Alright, maybe an Esper PO. Maybe not. That's my best draw. I try to cast Hull Breach in response to a cantrip. But maybe I should have just cast it in the upkeep before they have one more shot at drawing another Force of Will. Don't really need two of any color ever. And grab another Trop. There's a world where I just sit on this Hull Breacher, but I want the pressure that it offers. A lot of times, vintage decks will find a way to kill you if you give them time. Oh, beautiful. And so once you have that starting hate piece down, you just want to find a way to close the game as quickly as possible. And that's kind of why in the previous round I was really surprised that my opponent didn't counter the Oko when the Oko gave me one more turn of being alive. I don't know which one of those I'm supposed to counter. Like, they both feed into Abrupt Decay. I guess black feeds in towards, like, a Demo Tutor for answers. Maybe I should have gone with black. Also, like, super glad they pitched a PO to Force of Will, otherwise I wouldn't know what deck they are. Alright. Meddling Mage, great. So, in the past, with some of my Hatebears lists, I've kept Containment Priest in because it stops Tinker for something like a Sphinx of the Steel Wind. See if I still want to do that. I want oof. Energy Flux is kind of weird, but probably good enough. So, like, I don't really want Swords to Plowshares. I can probably cut a Tarmogoyf. I can probably cut one or both Okos. Like, Oko's biggest upside in many ways is that it's blue and can be pitched to Force of Will, and it's also a win condition or something that accelerates my clock. I don't really want Okos, and if I'm bringing in Energy Flux, I already am going to be up on blue counts from where I was in game 1. This leaves me wanting one more card. I could play these priests just as like a flash creature that lets me hold up mana while also helping to play around the Tinker plan. But playing the faster clock in Tarmogoyf could be better. I don't know there. I don't have reps to know. In a mono white list, I think I need the Containment Priest. In a blue list, I'm not sure that I do. I'm going to bring that Goyf back in. If my opponent ends up showing me a Mentor later, I might have to bring in some Swords to Plowshares to respect that. I'll keep this one. We get to play Oof on turn 1. If it doesn't work, we play Oof on turn 2. If it does work, we play Archon. Or maybe vice versa. Like, hand is good. I don't know when we cast this Ponder, but we'll find a time. Oh, baby. Fucking love Collector Oof. Card is so dirty. And yes, I do realize that I just shut off my Mock Jet. It's fine. The damage that I'm doing to my opponent is so much higher here. Oh! All. Alright, so I don't think I need to Ponder here. Let's dump another Collector Oof into play. Before I play Archon, I will play out Mox Emerald, but I don't think I need to play out Emerald this turn. I don't know what this pause from my opponent indicates. I'm going to err on the side of nothing and they were distracted or something. Oh, nope, that was them thinking about whether or not they should concede. GG's. Okay, so final round. I don't have Archon on turn 1. However, I can have Archon on turn 2 with Wasteland and Daze? Okay. kind of a fair-ish hand. Do I protect that? Surely not, right? I protect that with days. I play Archon of Emeria with no days next. Yeah, I'll just play Archon next turn. That's fine. Becomes more awkward if my opponent has a Mox, though. I don't like seeing that draw. Alright, it resolves. And I have a daze for something fancy that my opponent does on their turn. Rough. So this is one of the symmetrical ones. Well, part of it's symmetrical, part of it's not symmetrical. That doesn't really do much, but I am going to go ahead and daze that. The reason being that I want to wasteland my opponent and I want it to be impactful. And if I let my opponent make another land drop, my daze becomes kind of a dead card and my wasteland becomes much weaker too. What am I most scared of? Just a quick Tarmogoyf or Oko coming down, maybe? Renin 6 also quite bad. Alright. So I am, ever so slightly flooded. Alright, we picked the right land to wasteland. That's the good news. The bad news is I have nothing going on. Brainstorm would be so hot. Noble Hierarch falls into the category of acceptable. I think I'm just going to play out this drop since they already know about it. I was on the fence about the dazes prior to this league, and so I asked about it in the Vintage streaming Discord. And kind of the way they told me to approach it was that if you're trying to slam a game-winning card on either turn 1 or turn 2, your daze is totally reasonable. But this is I assume, a somewhat common situation where we didn't actually end up protecting our card that mattered. Ah. 1 damage a turn. 16 more turns to go. But hopefully our opponent is reading our situation as, like, I have counter magic, not I have nothing. Okay. We even play another land. Helps me play around opposing Flusterstorms. I would want to pitch both of these cards if I drew a Brainstorm. So I'm not going to play that. The awkward thing here is that if my opponent is not playing like a rogue mid-range deck and they're actually playing like a breach deck, my Flusterstorm doesn't really interact meaningfully with breach. I'm thinking about something. Right? I don't hate mental misstep. That helps me fight against something like an ancestral, which could be one of the spookier things that's going on. Um, but definitely feeling the difference between vintage and legacy here in that, like, I get one brainstorm, one ponder, and like, damn, brainstorm would be good here. I'm not going to fire off on that preordain. The fight isn't about this. The fight isn't about random cards. Like, mental misstepping this and setting them back a little bit is not really where I think I need to be. I might fight over a brainstorm, though. Because, you know, that card does stuff. This is Explore. Don't even think I fight a counter war over it. Like, it's worth one card and 1 point of damage. Now, if that card is good, if that card is a hate bear, it matters a lot. Okay, I will gladly mental misstep. Actually, I should just mental misstep with life. I don't think my life total is relevant here. My opponent's thinking about firing back again. Okay. So it's counter unless I pay 4. Oh, there's a punish for holding those lands. Do I want to fluster back? I can fluster back and turn my fluster into a card that's not fluster. But I think I'd rather just hold the fluster for later. This time walk doesn't actually matter. I'm not willing to fight over it that hard. Although maybe my legacy player pattern of holding lands for a long time or brainstorm cost me 1 damage and a new card here. Double Hierarch just quietly doing work though. Mm. My Flusterstorm doesn't counter that. Flusterstorm is just Spell Pierce here. That's unfortunate. Okay. That's the sort of card I wanted to be able to counter, but I didn't get that opportunity. Hmm. Okay, I think we're dead unless I top deck something relevant here. Dreadhorde Arcanist getting them 3 more cards, and then, like, lightning bolting this the following turn, um, ends up being really bad for me. Unless... I've got a chance here. I can cast Hull Breacher in response to them casting Ancestral targeting themselves, and if they fight over it, I Flusterstorm, and maybe end up winning that fight. I'm just going for Lightning Bolt. So, try to get in there and block Dreadhorde Arcanist now. We can just let that go. I'm super happy that this is working. Why did you let me block? Alright. Lightning Bolt, Hull Breacher have been cast already. This is counter unless you pay 4. Nice. Sure. I got to block 1 damage. I should not have gotten to block there. But I've just flooded out a little bit too much this game. Alright, well. That's a great top deck. This unfortunately does just get, like, Pyroblasted. Alright, we had a Force of Negation there. Now my opponent gets to Ancestral. Yep. That's bad news. That's very bad news. Oh no. Ancestral twice. So they return it with Mystic Sanctuary, they cast it, and then they can cast it again this turn if they want to. We are buried. I'm just gonna have 6. Like, they know I don't have anything at this point. Renin 6-2. Do I just scoop it up here? Are we convinced that this is so far gone that I can't get out of it? I think so. My opponent drew 6 cards this turn. They have a Planeswalker that kills some of my smaller creatures like Noble Hierarch each turn. There's Pyroblast and Lightning Bolt in the graveyard. I'll take 1 draw. And if the draw is a brick, we're done. Oh, do they just have Oko too? I'll just concede to that immediately then. Odo? Odo, hello? Guess I can go ahead and cast this. The distraction. I still feel just like beyond dead. Okay, yeah, I'll just concede to that. That's fine. All right. So what do I want against this deck? I want another source of plowshares for Dreadhorde Arcanist. And then from there, things are a little bit weird. Like, Collector Oof isn't particularly good against my opponent. My opponent's graveyard matters. I don't know that it matters so much that I leyline. Like, they're using their graveyard to try to replay things, but I don't know that this is the plan. Like, I don't know that this is how I win. Age doesn't stop all of the graveyard-based stuff. Like, it doesn't stop Ren and 6, for example, just, like, going back and returning all those lands. Similarly, the Containment Priest isn't exactly the graveyard hate that I'm looking for. I think I'm just looking at doing that. My opponent's deck is going to get better more than my deck is going to get better. Do I need to play Leylines? My opponent is kind of the better blue deck. Maybe I need to try and steal games. I could buy that I need to try to steal some games. I'm going to go ahead and board in Leyline. That means I won't play Meddling Mage. That means I probably can't afford those. And now my blue count is getting a touch light, so I don't know that I can cut another blue card. That probably means I have to go down one of these, since Leyline is how I'm going to fight that. My Moto is lagging just a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and restart the client real quick. Okay, so I've kept a relatively solid opening hand. It's not necessarily anything super exciting, but it has a lot of game. I get to like ponder on turn one and try to find something else strong to do. I could also just hold the ponder for Oko on turn two to protect it. Maybe that's actually better. Yeah, maybe that's better. I think my opponent is favored here. Didn't really do something broken. Oko doesn't qualify as broken by vintage standards. It's just something you can do. Right? Yep. Well, two of them, huh? I can source the plowshares one in this turn cycle and then Oko the other in the next turn cycle. Is that fine? That's probably fine. Oh no, this wasn't fine. My mana doesn't work quite right, does it? If I use this for white, I then don't have green. It is incredibly awkward, and I didn't realize that until a moment too late. Do I luck sack it? No, I think I just play an Oko plus on one of them, take 4 damage on the Oko. Swords to Plowshares 1. Yeah. We'll try to rely on Oko. I should have forced the second Dreadhorde. Okay, how does that change this turn cycle? Do I ponder first? Yeah, I ponder. I really want to pitch this ponder of Force of Will. Awkward. My opponent has a counter spell. They don't fire it off on this. Oh, yeah, I wish I would have countered. Didn't realize my mana problems until it was too late. That's a very costly mistake. And now they've gotten to cantrip once with this, which I could have stopped. Now, this potentially gives them one more look. Well, really 3 more looks at a card to protect this. How big are you? 3-4? I just Wasteland and play Tarmogoyf? Then I don't have Oko the next turn guaranteed. But that might be better. Hmm. Yeah, that might be better. Or at least there's worlds where it's better. The Oko line is a little bad if my opponent just plays land and then Pyroblasts the Oko. I've left my opponent with a 3-3. I think I get the greatest chance of stealing this game if I do this and then play Tarmogoyf. There's some risk here, though. Alright. Something with 4 toughness is a little bit difficult to take off the table. Alright, and before this happens, notably, I do have 4 ley lines in my deck, so I have 4 basically literally dead draws. It's not entirely true. Yep. Now my opponent is going to attack, and they'll try to Lightning Bolt the Tarmogoyf again, at which point I'll counter that. It's really bad if my opponent has a counter spell here. and really good if they don't. Shit. And this is kind of the risk factor of the line that I took. Alright, but now I can draw a land and hopefully play an Oko and everything's fine. Don't be ancestral. Okay, good. I can play an Oko next turn, try to answer Dreadhorde Arcanist. Means I can't really use this strip mine. I get to try 2 Okos in a row. Notably, I'm not going to have mana for this Archon. I wonder if the mana base for this deck can have some improvements, because there's definitely been a handful of times where I've tripped over myself in terms of being able to cast my own spells. Some of that has been my fault, though, admittedly. Like this game, I realized a little bit too slowly that my mana was awkward, and I didn't play in an optimal way. But this hasn't been the only time where this sort of thing has happened. Just top with that, which is spooky. Shit. I'm more or less comfortable conceding here. I know that I'm getting time walked twice. There's like Oko is on the top of my library, followed by another Oko. But if my opponent's out of cantrips, it's not all that bad. I just take 2 damage. But if they play another cantrip here, and I just continue to get buried, it's no bueno for me. We're also getting to the point where something like, a Dig Through Time or Treasure Cruise can happen, and that's equally not good. Oh? Nice. So you're telling me there's a chance. Hull Breacher? Dig? Alright. I don't think I beat a Dig. Like, Dig just finds 2 cantrips and they do their thing, or a cantrip and a counterspell. I don't know that I'm... Like, I think I've lost this one, but unlike in Legacy, where, like, a Dreadhorde Arcanist that's unchecked for 1 turn often means the game is over, in Vintage, you can come back from this. Like, there are so many cards that are ancestral levels of powerful that, like, you have a fair chance of coming back from so much. That takes my blue source, though, and at that point, I'm very confident that I'm not winning that game anymore. Okay, quick thoughts on the deck list. I like most of what's here. We only went 3-2 in this league, but the list felt pretty good. And I don't know that I love everything that's here. I maybe feel on the fence about the dazes still. There are times when they're going to be backbreakingly good, but as we saw, like, I used it to cast an Archon, the Archon resolved, and then I couldn't use the daze to protect it from Lightning Bolt. And if sometimes your protection spell that's a little bit weak as a whole, based on format power levels, isn't always protecting your stuff, I don't know that I'm in love with it. So I'd almost rather just have 2 more functional cards, like, 2 more copies of some bear in this list, than be playing the dazes. But I'm not 100% sure that that's actually correct. As far as the sideboard goes, I didn't really feel like I had stuff for fair blue in most cases, and that's fine. Like, we're very, very much tailored towards beating decks like Dredge and Hogak and Shops with this sideboard. And we're kind of pre-tailored towards a lot of blue decks. But a lot of times other vintage blue decks get to do things like board in a couple of Pyroblasts that are just generically very strong because they answer everything from counterspells to Ancestral to Hullbreacher and Oko, and even my Lavinia. But I don't necessarily get to do that. So this is definitely the sort of deck that I enjoy, and it's in my wheelhouse, and I'd absolutely play with it again, but I would probably mess with the exact list a little bit before playing this again. Anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider liking, commenting, and such. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and people finding my content. And if you're really enjoying, please consider doing a donation to see more vintage on this channel, because I would love to be playing more vintage. Have a great rest of the day.